at Mount Sinai is concerning the petroglyphs. Of course, we saw the petroglyphs of the cow and bull gods, Apis and Hathor, and there are also images of the ibex long-horned ram. But there are relatively few of those, but there are thousands upon thousands of the imprint of sandal feet, petroglyphs of sandal feet all over the land of Midian, all over Saudi Arabia. Thousands and thousands. Now, we have been out into the desert, out in the area of Har Karkum, where the Israelites camped, where they made 40,000 petroglyphs at least. And using the same method, we attempted to make petroglyphs on our own. And we found that it would take literally hours to make each one of these footprints, which have now lasted over 3,000 years. They are big footprints, there are small footprints, there are intermediate-sized footprints. There are whole families that have done their footprints. What are these footprints doing here? To answer that question, we went to Har Karkum, one of the camping sites of the Israelis during their 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. Har Karkum is a mountain in the Negev desert of southern Israel. You can only get in there by a 4x4. However, we needed to take an entire film crew and all of our equipment, so we took a Ford van, a 15-passenger high top, as well as several shovels, and it took us an entire day to build stone bridges through the wadis to get out to Har Karkum. There we were looking for a particular shot, and just before sundown we found it. Walking 3 miles back to the camp that night, and then making the pre-dawn trek back up there to where we could get a film of the petroglyphs in the foreground and in the background, Har Karkum. And here is where we chose to tell the story of why the Israelites took the time to chisel thousands and thousands and thousands of these petroglyphs of the sandal feet in stone in Arabia. Har Karkum. This mountaintop in the Negev desert of southern Israel is littered with the charred fragments of an asteroid impact that formed the Ramon crater to our north. When the nation of Israel camped here during their 40 years of wandering in the wilderness, they chiseled more than 40,000 petroglyphs into these burned asteroid fragments. Some of these labor-intensive etchings appear to be little more than the artistic expression of young shepherd boys tending the flock. But this petroglyph of sandal feet is one of the ancient property markers of the sons of Israel, who were promised by the Almighty, every place that the sole of your foot shall tread, that have I given you as your inheritance, from the river Euphrates to the great river in Egypt. That promise was taken literally, and the Israelites etched the imprint of their sandaled feet into the very stones of the land as they went. Every place that these petroglyphs of sandaled feet are found legally belongs to Israel, including the vast oil field of Midian in Saudi Arabia, where thousands of these footprints, fixed in stone, record the identity of the true owners of the land. I'm Michael Rood. Prepare for a rude awakening. There in Saudi Arabia are thousands upon thousands of petroglyphs of the sandal feet of the Israelites. Why did they take the time to do that? Because long before there were any Jewish lawyers who could appear before the claim offices and the courts, Israel took the promises of the Almighty to Abraham and to his offspring, the promises that were spoken to Moses and to Joshua, that every place that the sole of your foot treads, that have I given you as your inheritance. From the river Euphrates to the river Nile. They took the time to chisel the imprint of their sandal feet into the stones of the land. They chiseled the imprint of their children's feet into those stones. That was the sign that they took the Almighty literally at his promise. This was the promise that he made with Abraham. And as a countersign, God made sure that those sandals never wore out for the entire 40 years that they wandered through the wilderness. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a miracle. Those leather sandals normally would last just a season, just a few months before you had to make a new pair and go on from there. But when they took the time to chisel the imprint of their little children's feet into the stones of the land, signifying this belongs to Israel, this belongs to us, the Almighty made sure that those sandals never wore out. Those sandals grew with their feet. They lasted for an entire generation until they came into the land of Israel proper. And as they crossed the Jordan River, the manna ceased. They were in the land, and they were to subdue the land. They were to purge the land of every last vestige of pagan sun god worship. They were to completely subdue it, and they were to be a nation of priests. They were to be a kingdom of prophets, to speak the truth to the entire world. And those sandaled feet, to this very day, bear testimony that in the last days, the promises made to Abraham will come true, that that land will go to the children of Israel, and it does not matter what the United Nations, the United States, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, or anyone else desires. The end result is the Almighty will fulfill his word and his will. Now, many people believe in America they have concocted a religion in which they actually use the Bible, but they've concocted a religion which says that God's promises to Abraham and his children are null and void, that God will not keep his promise to them. They said that every promise that the Almighty ever made to Israel now belongs to Gentile Christians. Well, if God can renege on his promises to Abraham, don't you think for 1 second that his promises to you are worth the paper that they're written on. If he cannot keep his promises to Israel, then he cannot be trusted at his word. I will guarantee you, his promises will be kept, and this is the generation that we are going to see these things come to pass. And we recall just a few short months ago, it seems, that the United States military brought to bear an incredible firepower upon the nation of Iraq. And at the end of that, all of the land from the Euphrates over to the Nile didn't go to the children of Israel. Of course, that wasn't the goal. I'm just saying that was a horrendous amount of firepower, and it didn't move anyone 1 inch closer to the promises that the Almighty had made with the children of Israel. In fact, the United States used their attack against Iraq as a pressuring point to try to get Israel to give up the claim to the land and to go back on the promise that the Almighty had made with Abraham. But that is not the way that this whole thing is going to settle out.